It's a tricky one because, like, Max doesn't play by the rules, but George does. Because George is kind of a bit of a snitch and a teacher's pet, and he's always going to be the one like, oh, you haven't, what's the homework for this week? You forgot to give it to us, as that kind of guy.
That's a good segue.
Yeah,
into
talking
George
about
and
job
Max.
security. Yeah, talking about job security and Brackley. I think it's again there are reports, but fuck the reports because none of them are actually worth the salt right now. Uh, George versus Max, and I mean yeah, we've had Jason's view on it quite a few times. Uh, if you are Toto Wolff, the boss of Mercedes, other than the fact that you're a billionaire, you have a you have a choice to make between Max and George. Who are you going for? Nick?
Piastri.
I'd go for Max. To be honest, I would, because choosing the second driver would actually be harder than choosing the first driver, I think. Because if you bring Max in, you have to choose, do you say to George, we don't care about the Mercedes junior system, we don't care that you've kept loyal, we don't care that you've basically been the catalyst for everything we've done since 2021. We don't care about that. We're gonna replace you, and you can go off to Aston Martin, or you can spend your career trying to flaunt around midfield teams, or try and get yourself into some other top team. Or you can keep Kimi Antonelli, and although he's been doing really well because he's been nurtured into that seat and he's been given a car that's reasonably well at handling, and it's not got any ulterior characteristics, and he's not had much pressure put on him. If he was to go against Max Verstappen now or next year, all of that progress, all of that stuff he's built up would just go out the window, because he'd be decimated by Verstappen. He would be, because Verstappen would build the car in his direction. Kimi wouldn't have the authority to be able to say, no, we're not going in that direction. We're going to have a balanced car. So I think the way that you could make it work and have the best overall outcome is to say, have Max and George in the same team, because then George won't let the car be terrible, or he won't let it be directed towards Max's thing, and then you loan Antonelli out to another Mercedes-powered team, and that would only be if he'd accept that. If he was to accept to go to Williams, for example, if Sainz doesn't improve, or if they just want to get rid of Albon because he's a bit stinky, or he could even go to but you get what I mean. But you get what I mean. I was going to say Aston Martin, and I realised they were going to go to Honda, so that's not an avenue you can go to. But that's the only way. That's best case scenario. But then that's also really, really, really short term, because Antonelli's not going to want to stay at Williams long term, and Max, unless he retires imminently, Max and George are set for the next 10 years. So you've got a bit of a problem there that you'd just be kicking the ball further down the road.
Don't you? I mean, how stable? Not stable. Sorry. How inflammable is a George Russell Max Verstappen lineup going to be on a scale of 0 to 10?
2007 McLaren, but
Worse.
Yeah.
They basically take Toto with them I mean, look, it is possible that this could happen, but there's a high possibility that Kimi Antonelli has already signed an extension until 2027, which is what the reports are stating. But
I'm pretty sure of that as well, from someone I've spoken to. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah, even if we assume that that's not the case, Max and George as a lineup, and that's going to be combustible in so many ways. I mean, yeah. Peter, what's your take?
It's a tricky one because, like, Max doesn't play by the rules, but George does. Because George is kind of a bit of a snitch and a teacher's pet, and he's always going to be the one like, oh, you haven't, what's the homework for this week? You forgot to give it to us, as that kind of guy. But Max is like, he doesn't care how he beats you. He's just going to want to beat you. And so the two together doesn't really mesh in a team, because you'll just get George complaining that Max is doing everything wrong and he's not playing by the rules or whatever. But Max alone can carry a team by himself if he needs to, if the car's good enough. It's just that they clearly don't like each other, so unless your whole objective is just drama and PR and stuff for Drive to Survive, there's not a huge reason to put them as teammates together, because it's going to be really hard to actually create a good working environment, but also have the two personalities clashing so much. If that Max is going to want the car to work for him, and if it doesn't, he's going to like throw a hissy fit and George is going to complain if he doesn't like the car, and he'll just say, "Oh, well, they're favouring Max and doing all of this." That it doesn't.
There's a certain Jos Verstappen also in the background. I mean, peace-loving guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's less. Well, I suppose we don't see him at races so much anymore. I think he's been sort of. I don't know if it's unofficially banned from the paddock or whatever, but he's. I think that entire Red Bull sort of trinity, I don't know what you'd call it, is sort of falling apart a bit. Because Helmut Marko, people listen to him a bit less. He doesn't have a microphone in his face constantly anymore. We don't hear much from Christian, but then there's also the reports they might just get rid of him. Because the whole team is falling. I mean, you quickly realise how much Adrian Newey was kind of holding that team together. But then that's the case of anything. At the end of the day, it's the car that comes
Rob Marshall
first and foremost, and that. So, yeah, I don't know, but the Red Bull's going to go downhill, and Max he'll either move or retire because he constantly gets fed up with everything. Particularly the media, but there are loads of drivers in the past that, like Kimi and others, that hate having to do interviews, particularly when they're asked very kind of obtuse questions by the British media, especially as well. Yeah.
Wait. So what did you pick, by the way?
Oh, I see. Well, if you want just entertainment, I think you'll throw them together. But if the objective for Mercedes is to win both championships, then they probably should keep George. They could win the drivers maybe with Max, but it's gonna. I mean, particularly if he had Antonelli as his teammate, Antonelli's going to be utterly hopeless in that kind of environment, and would just kind of have the mental strength of a lentil against Max. So
Yes.
It's just like I get why people say you should hire Max. I understand that that's how Formula One works as well. World champions just get the seats that they want. This is always the case. And I get that Max is an upgrade on George in many ways. I just feel like, as I said last week, the upgrade on George is not massive. Like, it's not like you're taking, Max over a Tsunoda, for example, or, it's not like you're taking someone who's going to be 5 or 6 tenths faster, even though a lot of that's to do with the car building Tsunoda. But like, my point is, it's not like a Lewis Bottas situation, It's not like a Max Perez situation. This is I'm trying to think of the way you'd put this. Like, this is a Lewis Rosberg situation, and even that is a bit of a slam because Rosberg.
This is probably you can say
it's closer.
Michael Mika Hakkinen situation.
Yeah, or an Alonso Lewis 2007 situation where either of them would win the championship in the right car if you put them there. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, and I know. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, especially if you're cheating in the background as well. So like, it just feels to me like the upgrade isn't worth it because, and I said this last week, and I know it annoyed some Max fans, but I'm sorry, it's the truth. If next year Mercedes does have the fastest car, regardless of whether it's George or Max in that seat, either of them's winning the championship. Like, George has shown this year that if you give him the right car, he will win a championship. He doesn't have the mental problems that Orlando has. Sorry, almost slip of the tongue there. And he's a very quick driver, and he's very adaptable. So at the end of the day, like, no matter what the car is like we saw George in the Williams, we saw him in a difficult to drive Mercedes. The only time he's had any issues was for a few races in 2023 after they dramatically changed the car. He had some issues. So, like, will George win a championship in the fastest car? Yes. Can he race wheel to wheel? Yes. Is Max Verstappen a better driver? Yes. But is the difference dramatic enough that you would drop him and then take the downside of ruining your prodigy that you're training in the other car as well? Like, it just seems to me that you're basically destroying an entire future of one driver that Toto clearly believes massively in for a short-term small upside. I get that Toto's probably going to take that short-term small upside because the big upside of it is you completely destroy one of your competitors. Like, if Max goes, that's easily just an excuse to get rid of Horner. Then the board runs Red Bull, and Red Bull never come back and turn into a new version of Ferrari. But at the end of the day, that, as I said last week, that downside would make a lot more sense in 2021. Right now, Red Bull's probably not going to be competitive next year anyway. So you're kind of taking a chess piece off of a board that is finished anyway. The game's up for them anyway. So it's kind of pointless. I don't know. Being pragmatic on it, I just don't think it's a good decision for Toto. Unless he thinks that they're not going to be competitive next year and he's thinking we need a driver who can kind of pull a shitty car up the grid a little bit because we can just like go crazy in one direction. But I don't think Toto thinks they'll be in that situation, so what's the point? You know? That's my view.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest question mark is just around Max's future, because I think, look, he is getting fed up, but the problem with almost every F1 driver is around this age they all get fed up. Lewis was quite famous in saying that he won't be racing in his 40s. He spoke about Michael when he said that, but he's racing. Alonso, I think it was in 2006 or 2005 where I think when he signed the contract with McLaren, he said that this is going to be my last contract. And
that worked out well.
I mean, that was not even his.
He's now driven for 35
contract with McLaren. So.
Yeah, exactly, and he's driven for 35% of all F1 history now. I think the stat was the other day.
Yeah.
So, which is wild.
So that is another one. Then the problem that they have is when it comes to Max, even though he's cringing a bit right now, while what happened with Lewis or Alonso is he wanted to prove himself when he had Vettel and Lewis. So that's what pushed him again and again and again. Max is a different cookie when it comes to that. He's very, very self-assured in terms of I'm better than everyone else. That is his thought process. So he has set the date of 2028 and I think he's going to stick to it. After 2028, he's probably going to take some time off. He'll race in endurance, WEC and other series. He's probably going to realize precisely because like everyone else, he'll realize first of all, the grass is not greener on the other side. The money is much less. And while it might be fun, these are not the best cars in the world. They are still in Formula One. So they all come back because of these very reasons, and he will as well. But by 2028, he'll probably be done. And when he's negotiating and signing a contract with Toto, that 2028 deadline is going to be there. So it's probably a 2026 till 2028. That's the contract he's signing. And for Toto to have this much conviction that, okay, I'll have Max for 3 years. At the same time, he's burning George because, look, that's a bit of a betrayal because that's not a reciprocating of trust that George has put in the team. George is gone. Those 3 years, if he sticks with Kimi's done. Because I've seen a lot of things with Kimi. He's fast, he's talented, his racecraft is fine, there's no such issue as such. There's one problem that I think I've seen, and I think that's one major difference that's in Kimi when I compare him to the likes of Max, Alonso, Lewis, Vettel, and it's just he's maybe a bit too soft. Let's put it this way. I don't see the steely determination that I saw from a Lewis, from a Max, in the way not only in the way they conduct themselves, but the whole approach that they have to racing. Kimi is a bit more laid back, and I don't see him asserting himself as much as I've seen other drivers do. These top elite talents do. I think that's where maybe when a Max joins the team, the entire team is his, and Kimi might be left to fend for himself. And at 18, 19, I think that's too early. So yeah, you take a look at that, and I just don't think it makes any sense. I think I'd rather go with George because, look, we don't know in 2026 if we've seen Oscar do this, by the way, this season. That couple of tenths of deficit that he had in qualifying to Lando, he's pretty much covered it. Kimi is still improving. By next season, new cars, everything's different. He might be able to adapt a bit quicker than George. And the pace is there in terms of talent. Everything is there. He might be the faster Mercedes. So we don't know.
Look at Canada.
Which direction it goes.
I mean, his performance in Canada was just felt no pressure. You know, Max was right there alongside him. Didn't even, he got off the line quicker than Max and just held the whole thing. Even safety car, control
Oscar, by the way.
Yeah.
Fended off Oscar in the later stages, and he did it quite well.
You could say, Toto has said it, George is probably one of the top 2 drivers this year.
Yeah.
So, I just, from George's point of view, if he does get dropped, you've got to feel absolutely betrayed as well, because literally there's nothing more you can do right now. Like, you are maximizing that car to at every weekend. So like, he can't look back and go, well, maybe I should have. He's like, no, he did everything he could and still gets dropped. I know that, again, I know that's Formula One, but the upside to me just doesn't seem worth it for the downsides that you're bringing in, personally.
With Max as well, I've always had this feeling that he never really wanted to do any of this. That he's been just, he's been doing this. He's been racing literally his entire life, and it's about just being pressured into it by his dad, living vicariously through him. And out off the track, all he does is sim racing and testing, and he doesn't know any different. And because of the way that there's a lot of it is about wanting to please your father and get his approval, and the complaints about wanting to leave eventually, it all sounds very similar to Lance Stroll. The difference is that Max is actually good, but it's just there's always been that sense of it. It was never fully his choice, in the same way that most of the drivers, particularly the ones whose dads were never racing drivers, they obviously just wanted to do this and become the first generation in their family to do racing.